All right, welcome to the Gateway API meeting for November 18th, 2025. We have an agenda that looks relatively short, but I've been wrong many, many times before when I've thought that, so who knows? Um, yeah, this is Kubernetes community meeting, so, please be nice to each other. Please follow the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. And even though we don't have that many folks here, it is very helpful if you use Zoom's raise hand feature just so we can keep track of who wants to speak and make sure everyone gets a chance. Um, yeah, I don't think I see any unfamiliar names here. Well, maybe. So if anybody does want to introduce themselves and just say hi, very welcome to, especially if you're new to this community or this call. No pressure, but I want to give a chance for anyone who's new to this call. So one other note I just thought of when I was looking at this agenda is if you are not part of the Kubernetes SIG network mailing list, you can no longer edit this doc. You can just leave comments. Uh,
We
the
can
reason
presumably change
why
that, right?
is I changed that because Norwin pointed out that I forget how the doc was modified. I think it may have just been erased. I forget. Or no, the access had been changed on it. It was some really weird thing. Um, and so, what most other community docs do is they limit it to the SIG to edit. And we had survived with edit for the world for a very long time. And I guess it finally caught up to us. For anecdotal reference, SIG Network around a year ago had the entire agenda wiped completely, which is a really long agenda doc, and so it's easy enough to go back in history and recover it, but it was just a sign that maybe having a little barrier to entry would be useful. So that's
Having
what
the
we
dock
have.
get wiped out would certainly be alarming to see if you opened the dock.
Right.
Just,
Where did this go?
just say it.
Yep. Okay, well, I think let's run through this. Flynn, I think that means you're up next. So let's talk about
You
releases.
wanna you wanna share your screen and just click
I
on that
can.
link?
Yes.
I don't.
Hopefully everyone can see this.
Hang on a second while I click on Zoom. Yeah. Okay. So, um, probably most of y'all are familiar with GitHub projects. This is a shiny new project doc that Shane was gracious enough to make for me because I apparently have sharply limited access within some of this stuff, which is a little weird. Um, there are a couple of things I wanted to call out here. Number one is that I'm kind of making this up as I go along. So it is possible that others of y'all will be looking at some of this stuff and going, Flynn, this is a really stupid way to organize this. We should talk about that. The other thing I wanted to point out here is that first, this is very much a work in progress. There are some other things that I want to add to the board. Um, for example, Leora is certainly looking up here and going, but wait, what about mesh auth? And the answer is I ran out of time before adding that issue to the board, but yeah. Um, but I would also like to call everybody's attention to almost everything on this board right now is blocked. So like Rob, if you click on the listener sets in the standard block column, um, so this one is blocked because there's a hostname hijacking question that has an open PR um, that I believe we need to deal with before we take this all the way into standard. Um, and so everything on here pretty much has things where there's stuff that I think we need to resolve, or there are PRs open that we need to land, and that is why they're blocked. There's also nothing in here that's I have not yet added any other tasks, but for example, a thing that's going to land in the other column would be we need to have people sign up to write blog things and stuff like that, for example. So, the last thing before going over to Rob's raised hand is that all of these are issues because that's the easiest way to add something to the project board. Um, if anybody particularly hates the way some of this stuff is done, then we should talk about it. Rob, do you have something you particularly hate, or did you just have a question?
All of the above. No, no,
Excellent.
um, what I want to understand here, or maybe what I would recommend is blocked feels particularly negative for what I think is actually happening here. What I would suggest is if we could find a less negative term here. Like I think what it really means is there are open items left to be resolved. Uh,
Yes,
not so
I
much that
will.
we as maintainers have like just said no, we can't do. We're
Yeah,
blocking progress on.
that is a useful distinction, and I will come up with some things to say other than blocked. What I really want to do here is GitHub actually has a way now where you can specify dependencies for issues, and those show up on the board. What I really want to do is actually use that feature in here because I think that would be better. Um,
Yeah.
I don't seem to have the ability to go and add dependencies on issues in this repo, which is very weird to me. So I will be talking with the maintainers to see if there's something we can do there. Um, yeah, Rob, that was about my
Okay.
expression when I realized I couldn't do it because I did not believe that GitHub had that granularity of permission in it at all. So it was weird. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Agreed.
Anyway,
So okay.
we'll get that sorted out, I'm sure. Candace, I think you were next.
Yes, I have a question about the fourth column, which I'm not seeing on my screen right now, but I saw it in my own window. Um, this is grouping TCP route and TLS route together. I don't think that we intended to group those two together
Oh,
into
that
the
was
standard.
probably, I think that was my mistake then. Um, I know that we were talking about TLS route. I thought
Yeah,
TCP route was in pretty much the same state. Maybe I'm
there
wrong.
are some discussions about TCP route, but I don't think they're near as far along as TLS route.
All right.
So I think it's probably better to keep them separate.
Well, I had discussions over KubeCon about the similarities of the two.
Yeah.
But I guess TLS route is like nearly done, so no room for opening this.
All right. I have changed that to just say TLS route.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Candace. Ricardo.
No, I was just gonna say that TLS route we do have gap. We do have a bunch of discussion. TCP route not.
Okay.
And honestly, I don't have enough bandwidth to deal with those two at this release. So I will try to do a best effort for 1.6 and keep it out for now.
But I would like to understand, like, if TLS route is graduating, what's the story with TCP route? It feels
That was kind of why I was lumping them together. But I think
The,
the short version of all that is, yeah, we should talk about TCP route before just adding it to the board as a thing we're talking about moving to standard. So let's do that, although
that's
perhaps
definitely
not today.
true. But like one of the things that feels weird to me is that we're gonna end up with TLS route, but then
Hmm.
there's some interest in TCP route, and then the relationship between the two is going to be very weird, at least to me, because of
why
No,
I don't really
sorry.
understand why.
What's weird about the relationship, Lior?
so the way I understand it, like I had a substantial amount of discussion with Rusty over
Hmm.
KubeCon. So the way I understand it, TLS route is basically um, a way to specify TLS that's not on top of L7, basically, right? Like,
Right.
uh, is that a fair? I mean, we had substantial discussion. I don't want to derail the whole conversation,
Okay, let's let me add stuff at the bottom of this agenda to come back to TCP route if we have time, because I actually was pretty much done talking about the board, and that was what I actually wanted to talk about for this item, just in the sense of, hey, people, this board is out here. I am going to be using this to try to track the release. I am personally very interested in TCP route, but there are other things on the agenda that I want to make sure we cover since they were added first. You okay with that, Leor?
Yeah, sure. Like that's
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Cool. Thanks, Flynn. Thanks, Leor. Candace. Yeah, this looks like a good discussion item. Candace, do you want to provide more context?
Yes, I happened across this issue, but it describes, it just is in support of a question that I have already, um, regarding extended features. Is that the one we're talking about? Oh, no, no, no,
No,
sorry.
this is
Okay, let me back up. Yes, so I think everybody knows already that Ingress Nginx has been retired by the overlords at Kubernetes SIG groups, I guess, if that's the right way to, if that's the right terminology. I think I read that in some blog somewhere. They were called the overlords, which
I
is probably
think
not very flattering. Um,
I'm sure they love that term. I'm gonna go up and
perfect.
find Rita and say, "Hey, Rita, do you know you're the top overlord now?"
No,
um,
I think the decision came primarily from Kubernetes Security Response Committee
I think so, yeah.
and working with the SIG network chairs. But
yeah.
overlords is also a fun term. So
Oh, absolutely.
I'll let
Uh,
Rita know.
Rob, has this discussion been updated after our talk? Was it at Maintainer Summit in London?
no, it was not.
Okay.
But it was, you are right. It was at the previous, I think, London Maintainer Summit.
That
That
was
was a
that was a lot.
deeply fascinating discussion.
Yes. It was all of the we covered. Rob basically brought a proposal doing this to Maintainer Summit. And we got a whole lot of feedback on why it would be very difficult and
Yeah.
introduce a whole host of problems that we hadn't really spent a lot of time figuring out. What does this mean?
It was a deeply fascinating discussion, which
But
is
I
not to
do
say
think
I enjoyed it.
yes. I do think that despite the concerns or risks raised there, uh, a lot of that discussion was, should we do this by default in Kubernetes for everyone? Whereas what this specific discussion is about is, should we as a project recommend that Kubernetes distributions like GKE, AKS, etc., OpenShift, uh, include Gateway API CRDs by default? And that feels like a lower bar. And I think we're seeing, my understanding, and please correct me here, but my understanding is, obviously GK is already doing that for better or worse. I know there are issues there. AKS is, in progress, I think, or working on it.
We just, I think, launched something that's through an add-on.
Sweet.
So we have a way of managing CRDs for the standard channel now.
Nice. Okay. And then Candace, I think OpenShift is doing something similar starting recently as well. Is that correct? Or Ricardo?
I think Ken's is trying to rejoin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's right.
Okay. So I think what this means is
You realize you just made life ever so much more miserable for some of us there too, because
you're
now
welcome.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. But now I wonder, it's
So,
like there are a lot of Linkerd instructions that say things like, oh, when you install Linkerd, you should go ahead and add this gateway API thing because we're not going to manage it anymore. And now, great, what's going to happen if they run that command and GKE already installed it?
So we made sure not to
so
do that for you, Flynn. We're only doing the managed CRDs with AKS managed add-ons, so we won't be a problem for you.
As long as you have Linkerd as one of your managed add-ons, I'm okay with that.
No, it's more of like if you're DIY Linkerd, then you're just doing your own CRDs still.
Yeah.
yeah, so I
But
mean it basically. Well, no, that's okay. So the way it works on
it's
GKE.
it's a question. We don't need to burn a lot of time about it now. We should just maybe talk about that offline because
Okay, that's fair. But
it's
I think
it yeah.
I think it's very clear that we should write some guidelines or suggestions for how
Yeah.
it's beyond clear that people are doing this. So if we agree on some common recommendations so that at least it feels consistent across providers,
Mhm.
that would be fantastic. I think based on discussions at KubeCon last week, the general consensus I heard was something along the lines of, implementations in ensuring a minimum version of Gateway API is present seems like the ideal landing spot. But ideally, they should also allow newer versions of Gateway API to be installed by users, customers, etc. But that would be good.
Presumably that guidance would also be that if you're an implementation, you should never remove Gateway API.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. So, like, if you look into Kubernetes add-on manager, for example, it uses it will reconcile CRDs for you, but there's this hard-coded thing inside add-on manager which says it will never ever delete a CRD. Whatever happens, it will never delete a CRD, and I think that's just generally good practice of you know, you can install CRDs, but let users delete them or uninstall them when they feel like they want to. But otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah.
Broadly speaking, I think I'm okay with saying, hey, implementations, it's fine to install a minimum or to make sure that a minimum is present, but never ever delete anything.
And downgrading.
What about downgrading?
Downgrading to me is a deletion. Like if you find that Gateway API 1.5 is on your cluster and your minimum is 1.3, no, you just need to deal with 1.5.
Okay.
You must not go and try to downgrade to 1.3. And I am intentionally using the phrase must not. You can hear all the capital letters, right?
Yeah.
That's a great quote. You can hear all the capital letters. I appreciate that.
That's what
All
I
right.
need. I need a little button where I can like hit it and it'll cut in the extra reverb or something.
It'd be amazing. Candace, I think you're also next with some discussion around extended features.
Sorry, Candace, did you the
Did you make
upshot of all the upshot of all that while you were gone is, if you didn't hear it, is
Wait, I don't
Kubernetes
actually.
core
Oh, she is. Sorry. Go ahead.
Kubernetes core was very opposed to the idea of having Kubernetes include it when we talked to them at London, but Rob pointed out that the discussion you were referencing was really more about providing guidance to specific implementations, which should be a lower bar, and we think that we should be able to write some guidance that's reasonable about that. So I think that that's a very timely thing to bring up.
And if we want to like actually do some sort of follow-up working group or small group discussion about that specifically, I know the folks from Azure I can loop in. I talked with Spencer
Yeah, I think we should.
and yeah, like the OpenShift folks too, like Ricardo and Candace. yeah, if we want to
Mhm.
kind of figure this out, that might be helpful as far as next steps.
Yeah, yeah, +1. Candace or Ricardo, who's the best person to follow up with on OpenShift side?
Oh, make it Shane. He'll love that.
Perfect.
We can't still hear you, Kenneth, but I think you are. We can still hear you.
Yeah, we cannot
Yeah.
hear you still. That's annoying.
But I think we can probably follow up internally, both of us, maybe discuss
Okay.
that.
Cool.
And assign to Shane.
Hmm. Shall we skip ahead to
Yeah.
David's question and let Candace beat on her audio some more?
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
Okay.
David, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. So I just had one question, and this is regarding the attached listener sets gateway condition. So there it says that implementations have to add that gateway condition for to conform to listeners if they support listener sets. And feedback we got from users is that if they don't want to add listener sets and as you can see spec.allowed listeners is not present, the status will be set to unknown, and that is confusing and annoying to users. So only if listener sets are defined on the cluster, then can we add that condition.
Weird. Okay.
I mean, it does kind of make sense that, sorry, intuitively, it makes sense to me that that condition would be present only if there are actually listener sets attached. What I'm curious about is the case where you've defined some listener sets, but you got something wrong, and so none of them were actually attached. How do we reflect that?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the point that I'm getting at. So if listener sets are defined on the cluster, then we add this condition. But if no listener sets are defined, then we don't add this condition at all.
So I'm trying to think this through because listener sets
Well, I mean, it sounds like it's the
are
case where
conceptually
you.
similar to routes in that they only have a parent ref. It may not be a parent ref, but they have something like pointing up. And if you get that reference wrong, it is impossible for a controller to know if it should do anything with it,
If
right?
it should be reconciling, or if a different controller in the cluster should be reconciling.
Right. Like it's impossible for it to know that it's intended for it, that controller. And so you end up with these orphaned listener sets with no controller available to write status.
Do we not have a status on the listener set itself?
Yeah,
I hope we have a default, right, David? I don't know.
yes, the default is accepted and programmed as unknown. So I
Yeah.
think that should suffice.
Because if you get
So
the parent ref wrong and you look over and your gateway doesn't say anything about listener sets attached, then you should be able to look at status on your listener sets and go, oh, this is wrong. But if you have a gateway with a listener and no listener sets, it doesn't make sense for that gateway to have an attached listener sets condition on it, in my mind.
yeah, I mean, my thought here is in many cases in Gateway API, we have said conditions like this only need to be set when they're describing an error condition or a bad state. Or in this case, like when they're just describing something like other than the default path, right? And in this case, I think the true state, like, hey, there's some listener sets attached here, is the thing we want to call out. When there are no listener sets attached, I don't think we need to go out of our way to signal that here, because it would be signaled on the listener set itself by having, no changes to status and something probably wrong there. I'm seeing some links in chat though. So
Then would it be okay to get rid of the unknown condition entirely? And only if config dot or spec dot allowednesses sets is specified, then we either set it to true or false.
Sorry, okay. So basically you're saying get rid of this one. Am I
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah,
is this one
I
on
think
gateway
that,
or on listener set? Sorry.
On the gateway.
On the gateway. Sorry. Okay. So yeah.
yeah, no, I agree with this because unknown feels very weird. Like attached listener sets, unknown feels very confusing and strange. I am very good with removing that, and I would also say that even the false value is not something that I think most implementations should set. So really the only value that I think we want to be present here is true.
Isn't this a count for attached routes? Isn't it like a numerical value rather than a true false?
This is the condition. There is a separate count, which has proved somewhat contentious in terms of the perceived complexity of calculating that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think for a condition, my vote would be for sure scratch this. I also lean towards scratching this, but I feel less strongly about that. But for sure, unknown does not add value here, I think.
I think Rob, for the false one, it would be good to keep just so you can know that the controller saw that thing, but something wrong happened.
So the thing with false is it requires, it adds a lot of noise, right? Because I guess this is top level, so it's only for the gateway. But one of the things I am keenly aware of when I look at our own gateways on GK is we have a ton of conditions on there just by default, right? And so there's a lot of noise. And when if we just by default say, hey, there's no listener sets attached, it just seems like we're stating the obvious, like there's no TCP routes attached. Well, like it's a nut. Like if we did that for every possible child entity of a gateway, and I know listener set is different than a route. I feel like the precedent would just result in really noisy status.
Some of these I feel like could be usefully replaced with an event or a log message or something like that, right? Where, that false status I feel is mostly going to be useful for debugging a configuration. And then you're not going to be that interested in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we might want to think about that a little bit too.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much this goes also into the PR that David put, that Nick and John, they are discussing also about providing a feedback of like if you do have some listener set attached or not, and moving out from conditions to, instead of having a conditions, having some Boolean or some counter telling how many listener sets you have attached. But this goes to the very expensive, the discussion of this being very expensive for the status calculation.
I think that
because I don't think both
Rob,
make
didn't
sense.
you say there's already a count?
There is not, but that is what's proposed here. It is in line with what we've done for attached routes. John is making the point that for his implementation, this is, very expensive. I would be very interested in other implementations weighing in. I would not expect, it depends. I was talking with Nick yesterday about this, and at least for Cilium, and it's not that, but
it's very hard for me to understand how Istio could spend 20% of its CPU calculating the number, given that it already has to calculate the set of routes that are attached. I am not
right. That's been,
to be clear.
This looks like a thing we should probably optimize in Istio.
I feel like there are some optimizations that must already exist that make this so relatively expensive. It's hard for me to understand as well. The way I'm familiar with gateway controllers working is that they usually will, at least Cilium, GK, and I'm assuming others will end up basically, watching for changes. When changes happen, they say, okay, what gateways are relevant? And then let me reconcile all relevant gateways again, build the tree. And if you're building the tree, you already have this. But obviously, John has found a different, potentially more efficient way that doesn't already have this. I don't know.
Yeah, unless for something like just throwing it away earlier in.
Yeah, I don't get that because if you're computing an Envoy configuration, then I don't see how you're throwing it away. And if you're anyway, we should wait until John is around to defend his comments. John, if you're
Yeah, and I
watching this
mean,
later, just know that we don't believe you.
yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things he's arguing for a bool. I think an int is meaningfully more useful here. But yeah, please chime in if you're an implementation and if you have an idea of the complexity that routes attached is adding for you, because right now we're in a bit of a stalemate where, in general, the opinion is this shouldn't be that complex, and if it is adding 20%, there's
I think
there's room for another
I'm trying to
optimization.
remember this, and I think that it's not necessarily just tracking the count, it's that it's the rights to the gateway object to update it requires CPU whenever the calculated routes change. So it's just like the API server rights with like a high churn cluster
Okay.
might have been the issue.
That feels
more reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's cool. We just need to fix the API server so that it's not expensive.
Perfect. Okay. No, I can see in a high churn cluster where the number of attached routes is changing rapidly. That's a more reasonable. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that let me link this. And sorry, we got a little off track here. But I think we have a conclusion here. For sure, not this. My vote is also not this, but I can be convinced. And David, are you up for filing a PR to?
Yeah, I do that. However, when it comes to raising PRs, if I could get some reviews on my existing PRs to add to
Okay. Just
that would be
yeah.
great.
Sorry, KubeCon was very distracting for me. Ping me. I'll do what I can.
KubeCon was very distracting for everyone.
Yeah. Cool. Candace, can we hear you now? Maybe.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay.
I'm relying on my laptop speakers and microphones, so I don't know how that's going to work out in the long term. But so the next thing I wanted to talk about was extended features, because we are in a position where we are trying to write some, locally relevant documentation for our users. We can't actually send them to the Gateway API documentation because it contains a lot of stuff that we don't want them to be exposed to yet, like experimental features. We don't want them, bugging us all the time to get those experimental features added, because we only support standard features. But no, that's not the reason why. But I mean, we can't send people to the Gateway API documentation on its own. It's just it's not right for us. We need to sort of interpret it in terms of our product integration. So I feel like it's helpful for us to include in our own docs when something is an extended feature, because that basically means you have to ask your implementation, whether they implement that or not, and in what form they implement that as well.
Who's the
For
customer
example,
here for
there's
your
this
docs?
For backend TLS policy, you can either support a single cert or multiple certs. And single cert is core, multiple certs is extended. So, how we explain that to people becomes pretty difficult. And how we as a gateway API documentation explain that to people has got to be even more difficult. Unless we have some kind of canned text that says this field is optionally implemented, you need to check with your implementation.
Do you have, I think this is a constant point of confusion with Gateway API. So I agree that docs improvements are needed. One thing, since you're talking about, I think you're talking about OpenShift specific documentation. Do you have, my understanding is that you are open to users bringing their own or choosing their own gateway implementation on top of OpenShift, but do you have any subset of implementations that you recommend or provide more support for that you could kind of focus your docs around?
Yes, we do. We've chosen Istio, and we also have another integrated product within OpenShift called OpenShift Service Mesh, which is based on Istio.
Yeah.
It's installed somewhat differently, but the CRDs themselves are installed as a part of OpenShift now, starting in release 4.19. But it's only the standard CRDs, and we manage it with a validating admission policy for people not to change that at the moment.
Okay. So, I mean, what I would do, obviously, docs is not a strong part of Gateway API. We have lots of improvements that I would like to see happen here, but I would certainly, if I were in your shoes, focus on the implementation that you expect most of your customers to use or that you offer, and that would be Istio. So I would say, hey, this is supported by Istio. And in the case of optional features, add a little asterisk or some keyword. It could be extended, it could be optional, and just say optional for other implementations, check with your implementation. But I feel like highlighting for your primary implementation, the support status feels like the most useful thing. And then I guess you're mostly talking about the second part of what's the standard way of describing this field or feature is extended, and you've got to check with your implementation to see if they support it. Am I on the right track? Or?
Yes. I guess I was wishing that we would, in our own documentation, point it out more explicitly that this field is an extended field and what that means. It means, I mean, in our own Gateway API documentation, that in the Gateway API documentation, it should say this is extended, and even go so far as to say it's really complicated to try to explain to somebody that you can use a single cert or multiple cert depending on your implementation. I don't know how we would do that in Gateway API, but I feel like we need to point people to their implementations in a lot more places than we do already.
One of the things, so it's been a slow roll. But one of the things I've been really wanting to see come to fruition here is the supported features notion becoming universal in our docs. So anytime you're reading a guide, anytime you're reading documentation, that documentation will say, listen, you need these 3 features to be supported by your implementation for this to work. And you can see that either by looking at gateway class status or mesh status soon, or you're looking at our implementation comparison page. So that is the goal. There are still gaps there. Even when we get there, there are going to be features that we don't have covered by conformance tests. The supported features thing only covers things that are covered by conformance tests, but that should be most things. And if we're missing something, that means that the solution is to add more conformance tests, I think. So yeah, that is my vision. It requires more people to jump in and help and get us to that point. But yeah, that is a goal, to be able to see throughout our documentation, throughout other documentation such as OpenShift, if we have a common way of describing these things with feature names, that feels like the ideal.
Okay, so supported features is the recommendation. Okay, so the next part of this is my question about whether there's, if an implementation implements an extended feature, are they responsible for keeping it as an extended feature and also moving it to core necessarily when and if it does move to core in the API? I mean, I don't think they are, but is there anything that we can rely on if we tell people to use an extended feature, and we're not even really sure if the implementation is going to keep that extended feature?
Yeah, there's
Fact
some,
check, we have
looks
10
like.
more minutes.
Yeah, thank you. So I think Mike nailed this in the sense that yes, and Flynn, like it is possible for extended things to become core. I don't think that's happened in the history of Gateway API yet, so it's one of those theoretically.
I'm not sure it's possible right now. I think we want it to become possible, but since we don't actually define how to do it, I think it might be a stretch to say it is possible at this particular moment.
I mean, basically,
yeah, it is allowed. Yeah, that's a good phrase.
Yeah, okay. The requirement would be that you have all implementations that have submitted a conformance report, and those are represent a diverse set, have passed this feature, support this feature, and then you can say, okay, well, maybe this should be core, and I think, yeah, that requires more discussion, because it feels like you need some kind of like soak time, some kind of warning, hey, this is about to become core and no longer optional. But we should provide a path. Okay, but to Flynn's point, there's 10 minutes, and I think we've got what I expect to be a non-trivial topic coming up. So, Stephen, let's talk about Ingress Nginx.
Yeah,
you're muted.
I don't think this is gonna be really a lot to talk, just because I'm not done. I just want to say I'm working on it. I hope a lot of the stuff will find an easy consensus. Like, we need to support more annotations. We need to add integration tests. We should control the output, whatnot. I think the big one right now is what we were talking about vendored stuff and implementation specific output APIs and what vendored means. I might put that in a separate doc. Wonder what people have thoughts people have about this.
And for context, this is some of the discussion that we had at one of the maintainer breakouts last week.
Yes.
And there was some concern about like long-term sustainability and maintainability of Ingress 2 Gateway project maintainers having reviews and like basically accountability for code from other implementations generating something like Envoy Gateway specific policies or something like that that's out of the core. And we have prior art in other SIGs, so like SIG Cloud Provider did this of like moving cloud provider specific code out of Kubernetes core, for instance. So there's paths that we could consider for like how to more modularly account for potential different destination outputs.
With respect to the doc, Stephen, my gut feel would be do whatever is easiest for you immediately.
Okay.
And then maybe we, after there's more information there and we've looked over it, maybe we end up moving to a different tool or asking for things to be broken out. But since you're already tackling all the work of writing the stuff down, minimize the work you're tackling, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Having it written down at all will be such a huge win that I'm not that concerned about the exact format yet.
Yeah. It would also probably be helpful if I could become a maintainer for the project. I guess I can talk to Leo or Ricardo about that.
Yeah, no, I think we are in a process where we need to nominate a new set of maintainers, basically. So, what I'm hearing is it sounds like we have a few people that are interested. And I am sure Lior is very happy to have more people involved here. I certainly am. So I think this is a great time. I know we've already started another kind of chat thread about, next steps for Ingress to Gateway with the folks that we think are interested, but it's not meant to be exclusionary. It's meant to, avoid noise for people who aren't interested. If you are interested and aren't included there, please let me know or someone know, whoever. But yeah, I think this may merit some. I hate to propose more meetings, but like it may merit a separate work stream where we have like once we have some more detailed designs, we have some focus meetings on Ingress to Gateway specifically.
Yeah.
And yes, I am very very supportive of introducing a new set of maintainers here. So
Perfect.
Yeah, one of the things I would add that actually is tied back to the new set of maintainers is so this doc is great, and one of the things that's important is to also kind of put some timeline. I mean, like basically most of the community right now is kind of watching this, and while this can be something that's gonna be like not persistent. I mean, I want to be careful, right? Because after the two last KubeCons, we also had a lot of people coming to Ingress to Gateway. Also, people that are part of SIG Network community and say, "Oh, I'll do this and I'll do that," and like I'm negotiating with my boss to get more time because it's extremely important. We're running Ingress Nginx all over, and then they disappeared. So one of the things that is going to be important is right now we already have an inflight of issues on the repo. Some people pinged on Slack directly, but it's gonna require some coordination to kind of refer back to this doc, have this doc. Maybe it's the set of, this is what we are gonna do, and hopefully this is the time I'm gonna do to kind of make sure we're meeting the March, obviously 2026 timeline.
Yep.
And also kind of being engaged in reviews and because a lot of people right now wants to go and start and adding some, for example, there is an issue for adding Envoy extensions inside the repo where we met and said we probably would not want it to be this. So anyway, so I think reviewing a lot of the reviewing and responding to a lot of issues would be a core part of engaging, and it will help a lot and probably help us set up maintainers, a new set of maintainers that we know are going to take the project forward.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, like, following the pattern we've seen in other groups of, like, we can iterate quick on a Google Doc, and then just for purposes of discoverability for folks who may not be tracking all of that in all of these meetings, like, PR it into an actual proposal in the repo so that it's apparent for anybody who comes looking to contribute.
Shall we try to use the last 3 minutes to talk about gateway control, and then Lior come back to TCP route and TLS route next time?
Yeah, that seems fair.
I actually, I don't need 3 minutes. I just wanted to announce that we managed to get it into Homebrew so that it's easier to install. It bothered me always to install it from the source. So now you can just download it from Brew.
That is,
And
I would honestly, I would love to do the same thing with Ingress to Gateway. If you have any notes on, like, how you managed to do that.
I think it's the case already.
Oh, okay.
Wait, what?
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
Let's find out, shall we?
I think so. I remember
Install
helping someone doing
Ingress
it,
to
but I may be
Gateway.
wrong. But let me check.
I wonder if you need to like add it.
Ingress to Gateway Homebrew formula. Yeah, there is
All
a
right.
page.
All right.
Okay. Damn,
Great.
all
Didn't know
right.
that.
That's the last update.
But no, I want to
actually not only is it there, but when I talk about it, when I just read brew install Ingress to Gateway, my Mac said, "Dude, you've already installed this." So nicely done. You managed to make it work well enough that I forgot I ever did it.
So this is a good reminder and segue. One, thank you, Norwin. Norwin has been driving a lot of awesome improvements to Gateway Cuddle. It has been very cool to see. So thank you. And then two, a lot of us are very focused on Ingress to Gateway as our main point of focus. But I would, and I am very, very supportive of that. But I would also remind folks that, like, our docs exist and are not great. And even just mentioning, hey, like, Gateway Cuddle exists, Ingress to Gateway, like having clearer callouts, having a clearer guide on Gateway API website of here's what it means to migrate from Ingress. We can lean a lot into that. I saw a lot of discussion over the past week about Gateway API and how you can choose an implementation. And one of the things I did not see in any of those conversations is any reference to conformance, which made me sad. I would really, really love to see, to do what we can to control the narrative a little bit. And, when people get to our documentation, they have some guidance of, we have an overwhelming list of implementations. That's. And sorry, I know we're at time, but one last thing while I remembered it. In the matter of a week and a half, there's going to be a big old change coming to our implementations page. This is as a draft, so it doesn't automatically merge, but you should pay attention to it because it is something that was promised a few months ago now and finally coming to life. I think this is great to try and help distinguish between the implementations that are conformant and those that aren't. I will be, as much as I am happy for this, I will say that the implementation I work on is not at the top of the list. We are a partially conformant implementation. But yeah, just please watch out and make sure we haven't missed anything along the way here. But with that, we're past time. So thanks, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, y'all.